Energy and economy, budgets, taxes, and a surging stock market. Every time we get together, Maury, the stock market just continues to surge past record highs. 23,000 now is where it's headed, or where it's kind of fluctuating. All the experts like Mark Cuban and some of these other guys before the election said, oh, Trump gets elected, it's going to crash. Nothing could be further from the truth. We've added trillions of dollars into the U.S. economy and wealth in the stock market. It has to give at some point, does it not?
Well, that's an interesting question because the main reason for that is there is so much extra money around today. All the years I've been...
Isn't there optimism in the country as well?
Guarded optimism, I would call it. I think there's always a concern something is going to give way very quickly. Every day, I recall when they, at the time before the election on November 8th of this year, they were talking about the fact, sure that Hillary was going to win, but things were going to be okay because she's going to do the same thing that Obama did. And I say without any hesitation that President Obama did everything he could to
undermine
dramatically. We'll talk about a couple other things about that later, but he undermined this country. He literally, when he made that speech on June the 9th in Egypt, on Cairo, Egypt, to the whole Muslim community, he said, we have done wrong by you, we're going to support you now. And if you recall, there was an election at the time where people went in the street. The last time that the Iranian people went into the street to try to do something, he looked the other way. If there had been any kind of mention from America that we are supporting the average Iranian and the people out of the 85 million population that they have, it might have gone the other way. But it's almost positive in my mind that he wanted to have the
authority.
Ayatollah Khomeini. One thing a lot of people don't know is that Steve Young, who was his security advisor, advised him to get to the French. The French had the Ayatollah Khomeini in jail because...
You're talking about now 1979.
I'm talking about...
The Carter years.
Yes, I'm talking about Carter years. And you're absolutely right. I'm talking about the Carter years, 1979, where his security advisor said, Iran the Shah is very weak. He can't get anything done. Let's get this guy Khomeini. He'll strengthen him. And you know something? They put pressure on the French. They had him under house arrest. He came to Tehran. Immediately there was a coup d'état. The Shah was thrown out, and we did nothing. And people don't remember that, but Carter was behind this whole thing. I don't know what his game was. I don't know what he was.
Brzezinski was a big factor in that as well.
Brzezinski was a very big factor as a foreign policy advisor.
Mika's father.
You got it. But the point is, the question is why. The Carter administration definitely put Khomeini, Ayatollah Khomeini, and Khomeini as his son. These people are bad people. They're out to destroy Israel, that's for sure.
Well, the Democrats have a history of siding with the Islamists. I mean, look at Erdogan in Turkey. That was Obama's mentor, so to speak. He said that's what we wanted.
They were very friendly. There was an uprising it failed because the failure was based on the fact that it was against what these liberals wanted to see happening in Turkey.
Now let me ask you a question. Taxes is on the table right now, cutting taxes. We desperately need to cut the corporate tax rate. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, 35% is the highest in the world.
I mean, Ireland's looking to go to 8%. So how are you going to compete with that? The Democrats want to keep it at 22. Trump wants to get it somewhere between 15 and 20. Is it even possible this year?
I don't think so. I think there's so many things that are standing in the way.
Like what?
Well, first of all...
Healthcare?
first of all, let's remember we have a debt that's now over $20 trillion. What are you going to do? Just keep spending more and more, and the debt goes higher and higher and higher.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because we have a budget that's about to come due, and they're talking about reconciliation again. And they won't cut spending. They can't cut one dime in spending, but they want to continue to spend more and more and more. So what happens now with the budget reconciliation?
Well, I think unless the Republicans finally wake up and smell the coffee and say, we're going to be 100% behind Trump, I think that's our only chance to have a good tax program passed before.
And as much as they hate Trump, and most of them do. It would be smart strategically and politically for them to get behind him and pass some things like tax reform, like the corporate tax, like infrastructure. It would be a win for everybody. But my fear is that they hate him and loathe him so much, they're willing to die at the cross over this. Am I wrong?
I think you're right up to the point. I think basically they loved the way we were doing things in this country, where they could be in Congress for many, many years and they'd get a nice job afterwards.
And be a lobbyist against America when they retire.
Lobbying was almost automatic for anybody that served in the House or the Senate, so they were going to continue their pensions on. And I hate to say this, but I think a majority of people in Congress would like to see things stay the way they are. They don't want to see more power come to the hands of the President of the United States, and they're going to do everything they can to weaken his position.
But isn't it interesting that they didn't mind it when it was President Obama?
Come on.
They allowed him to take over, write executive orders.
Of course, they allowed him to take it over because he was willing to play their game 100%. He went along with everything they wanted. My God, I guess we're going to maybe mention this later, but to take a man who was a traitor to this country, in the Second War, even in the United States, if you were a deserter, you would be shot on the spot without trial. This guy not only...
Talking about Bergdahl?
Bergdahl not only was freed by us, in turn freeing 5 of the worst kind of criminals that were being jailed in Cuba in order to keep them out of making more trouble. Consequently, he was then invited to the White House in the trade of these 5 murderers.
And his parents spoke Arabic on the White House lawn, and the president nodded in approval as if he just fell in love with it.
But you see, one thing that really worries me in this country, it's not only the media being a bunch of liars in most cases, and also compound that with having no background at all about history.
And the education system that's lacking.
And education system is lacking, and the protestation, and the fact that the professors literally are propagandists. If you are a conservative, a mild conservative, they'll kick you out of there.
Oh yeah, they'll want to shoot you.
This is unbelievable.
Oil is on the rebound. One of your latest blogs in the Beschloss Perspective, which if anyone wants to look that up, just Google Beschloss Perspective, talks about the rebound of oil. And there were some very interesting statistics I don't think that most people are aware of. I know I took it to be a little bit surprising. Explain what's going on with oil right now.
Tell me specifically what you're referring to.
The fact that we're exporting as much as we're exporting as opposed to importing where we were 30 years ago, say.
I'm glad you brought that up, exactly. What's happening now is, this is almost comical in a way, when Obama wanted to pass his last bill in order to fulfill the financial obligations to his friends and so supposedly for the country, but he needed enough Republican votes in order to make it happen. So he said he was willing to lift the embargo of shipping American goods out of this country, especially oil, the embargo was against shipping oil outside of the United States, because that was at the time that the Saudis had put an embargo on us, and as we talked many times on the show, it was hard to get gasoline at the gas station. It was terrible. We didn't want this to happen again. So he made a deal and said, okay, if you guys will vote for my last ability to spend the money that I'm responsible for, I will let you lift the embargo. Well, the embargo got lifted a few months before he was out of office, and that what he didn't realize by doing so is the kind of oil that's being produced here in the United States. It's called West Texas Intermediate. It's a very lightweight kind of oil. It's very much in demand in Southeast Asia, for instance, because the refining needed for our kind of oil is much less than the oil that you get out of most other places.
The Brent crude?
Brent crude. About 80% of the oil in the world today is Brent crude. For some reason, the shale oil that we have here in this country is West Texas Intermediate. So now we are starting to ship like it's going out of style. The last bit of information I have on it, we are now shipping 2.5 million barrels of oil a day. 2.5 million, that's higher than what Kuwait, which is one of the oil countries of the world, is shipping.
I've been a little contentious about this point with you for years. I've always felt that it would be smarter to keep our oil in reserve and use the rest of the world's oil as opposed to sending or shipping out oil, selling our oil. Because if we do have an oil shortage, I'd rather have it here than have to go look for it elsewhere.
I'll give you a little credit here without being insulting. You were talking about the good old days. You didn't have the fracking that we have now. Do you know what we could produce if we went wide open today? Instead of the 7 or 8 million barrels we're doing today, we could go as high as 15 million barrels. It's a license to really...
But it's not in perpetuity. It's not forever.
It could be, because fracking in shale oil is something we have. The Permian Basin, we have a bunch of basins here in the United States where you can get oil till the cows come home. Now, maybe 100 years from now will be needed, but today we can sell oil.
Well, 100 years from now, we're all going to be underwater from global warming, so we won't have to worry about it.
No,